Sunday morning cold, eyes on the score, touchdown dance ball, craving for more. Friends are calling, trades are on fire. Rookies falling, championship desire. Fantasy football fever, chasing the dream. Top of the leaderboard, we're the winning team.
Your team's health is our priority at Fantasy Football Healers, where we're not just analysts, we're your Dynasty medical team. From waiver wire prescriptions to trade diagnostics, we're serving up daily doses of fantasy wisdom. And now you can catch our healing powers on YouTube with shorts, podcasts, and league videos that cure your fantasy football blues. Your championship run starts with the right diagnosis. On today's episode, we're going to be going over the pre-draft rookie draft that was done with the No Guts, No Glory League. I'll give a little bit of an insight on the No Guts, No Glory League. But first, let's go to the news. Jim Irsay of the Colts has just passed away this week. Our condolences for the Colts organization and our co-host Colton Palmer, who is a huge Colts fan. Brock, he gets the bag. He got a huge contract with the 49ers, 5 years, $265 million. Mr. Irrelevant is very relevant here for the 49ers. Here I was thinking that there was going to be a quarterback controversy between Brock Purdy and Mac Jones, with my thought process that Mac Jones was really the guy that Shanahan wanted to draft instead of Trey Lance. And now they find themselves with Brock Purdy. They find some stability there at the quarterback position, and now they've got to decide what they want to do with Brandon Ayuk going forward. Speaking of bags, Derrick Henry has an extension of $30 million for 2 years with the Ravens. He just seems like he's just a fantastic fit for the Ravens organization. Good for him, right around that 30-year-old range, and for him to get $30 million in a 2-year contract for the Ravens is going to be fantastic. I've heard of a few wide receivers that have been bulking up in the offseason, one of which is Jaden Reed of the Packers. He bulked up to 199 pounds from 187 pounds. And recently, the Packers general manager said that the team views Reed as the top receiver for their organization. And that's after they've already drafted a round 1 wide receiver in Matthew Golden, the first that they've drafted in like 20 years for the Packers as a first rounder. And then in the 3rd round, they again went wide receiver with Savion Williams, another receiver that has bulked up recently. And I've heard that his pictures of him are just completely massive. And that's Marvin Harrison Jr. And so the Cardinals are looking to potentially become a better force in the NFC. And Marvin Harrison, I would say he was underwhelming last year. He exceeded expectations. And a lot of that just seemed like they just kept running the deep routes with Harrison, and they need to find a better way to utilize him and open the field. And of course, McBride is still there. I view him as the actual wide receiver 1, and that's their tight end. And then with Marvin Harrison Jr. being the number 2. My Vikings, Jordan Addison. His trial is set in June of this year, and that's for the July last year DUI charge. And he has basically said that he's not guilty. And next month, we're going to see what's going to happen in regards to Jordan Addison, whether they find him guilty or not. If so, I hear that it could go up to 6 months of jail time. With these professional athletes, a lot of times it doesn't go that direction, especially with nobody hurt. But if Addison has any conviction charges, there will be suspensions that will be looming from the NFL. but the NFL just seems like they're really kind of like holding back until there is more of a judicial process for these athletes. This could make it important for you to, if Ty Felton, the third round wide receiver for the Vikings, this may be one of the reasons why they end up going to receiver in the beginning. And if he's on your waivers, I'd be scooping him up as a just in case. If Jordan Addison misses time, then Ty Felton or Jalen Naylor could potentially be the wide receiver 2 for the Minnesota Vikings. So whether you believe in either one of those two players or not, their value would certainly increase if Jordan Addison misses any time whatsoever. The general manager, Andrew Berry, stated that the Browns believe Judkins can be a bell cow runner and can carry the load for them. And so that's got to make you feel great if you're a Judkins owner. If you drafted Judkins anywhere, he looks like he could be a Nick Chubb replacement. It doesn't sound like Nick Chubb is going to be back with the Browns. And so look for Judkins to be dialed up with many opportunities, especially with all the quarterbacks that they have potentially for the lineup for the Browns. They're not going to be chucking the ball really much at all. Judkins has every opportunity to take on the load, and he's got the build to do so. So it's nice to hear the GM have some faith and some hope in their early round running back that they drafted this year. Scary Terry McLaurin, he's looking to get paid, and he has already had some problems with some attendance. He missed the last day, the final voluntary minicamp date, and there are speculations that he's starting to put on some of the pressure to the team to extend him prior to the June 10th mandatory minicamp timeframe. And, he had a great connection there with Daniels. If they can't have Terry sit out too long, because they need to continue to build up reps for this young quarterback and this young team. And they don't really have a whole lot of other resources at the wide receiver position. Yes, they got Debo, but Debo is still new to this team, but they've already built a rapport there with Terry McLaurin. Look for Terry McLaurin to get signed here in the upcoming weeks. And finally, everyone's so interested about the Saints quarterbacks and Jake Haener being one of them. He's already on the injured list. He's injured his oblique. He did that this past Wednesday, and they're looking that he is going to miss the rest of OTAs, which gives Shuck more opportunities to potentially be the starting quarterback for this team now that Derek Carr has retired. Jake Haener, he's off to the side. He's getting injured. He's going to have to do rehab. And then basically that just means he has to beat out Radler. So it's just Shuck and Radler right now. And boy, this Saints team is going to be an interesting one to watch. If you can say tank, that's exactly what this team is going to be doing over the next 2 years. They're going to be trying to tank the next 2 seasons with some early speculations that they're wanting to draft Archie Manning. Remember, his grandfather, he was a quarterback for the Saints. What a story it would be if he ended up on his grandpa's Saints team and build this team right back up. That would just be really exciting. Today, it is going to be a solo pod. This is your host, Dustin Brown. Today's pod is going to be about the pre-draft, rookie draft that we had prior to the NFL draft in the No Guts, No Glory League. This No Guts, No Glory League really makes it interesting because you get to plant your flag on the guys that you want, the guys that you've done your research on, the guys that you're wanting to build your franchise around, regardless of which NFL team that they're going to land on. It makes it really interesting because a lot of them are just names and you don't know what round that they're drafted in. And so you don't have the draft capital nor the landing spot to know how valuable these players or these assets are going into the draft. And so if you do your homework, these draft picks could be worth quite a bit all the way through the 4th round. There was a couple years ago when Jaden Reed was a rookie, I ended up getting at the 402. So even in the 4th round, these picks can become valuable and they can really skyrocket. So let's look and see how this rookie draft goes. A little bit of history. This No Guts, No Glory League is going into its 5th season. It's a 12-team Superflex PPR league, 2 tight end league. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, 2 flex, and 1 super flex. That equals 11 starters that you're starting of a 30 active roster build. So there's 19 bench spaces and an additional 4 taxi squads players that can be attached there. But the taxi squad is only good for rookies. And so if you have any players that are greater than their first rookie year, then they have to be activated the next year before the NFL season starts. With the No Guts, No Glory League, I would like to at least go through the winners that we've had over the years. So in 2021, we had Fuller, who had won the inaugural season. In 2022, we had Engold. 2023, T-Mick. And just last year, our current champion, Siege. Who's going to be the No Guts, No Glory champion this year? I guess one way to find out is how did everyone do in this rookie draft? So first off, you'll see here that at the 101 and the 102, it was actually owned by the same team. This team went Hampton and Genty. And so I had to reach out to him and say, is this really the way that you had them ranked, Hampton over Genty? Or is it just something that you just kind of push the button on both your players to, just keep the draft going because you had the 1 pick and you had the 2 pick? And so I had to clear the air. They did have Genty over Hampton. It just happened to be that Hampton was drafted over Genty in this particular draft. At the 3 spot, Henderson was drafted here. There was, some thoughts that it could be, the consensus 101 of the NFL draft. Could it be Cam Ward that was going to be at the 3 spot? I think once you get to this point, it's kind of a choose your flavor. What's your need for your team? And this particular team needed running back help, and they needed it often. And so they went with who they thought was the next best running back on the board with Henderson. At the 4 spot, they went with Cam Ward. This team needed some quarterback help, and Cam Ward, again, he did end up getting drafted at the 101 spot to the Titans, and that was the speculation all along. So the 104 spot was a pretty easy pick for this team. At pick 5, Judkins. Again, running back help. Who doesn't like Judkins? Judkins, especially pre-draft, had a lot of hopium for, and he still does. We just, heard that the GM wants to give this guy the ball at all times. And so Judkins at the 5 spot was a fantastic pick. Now, here at the number 6 spot, during the pre-draft process, so before the NFL draft, this current league, once this player was drafted, basically just kind of crapped on this guy for drafting him. It went Tyler Warren. And so Warren was drafted. The first tight end was drafted at the 1-6 spot. And the reason that this league ended up, I don't know, I want to say complaining, but they definitely showed some concerns that a tight end was drafted before a wide receiver was even drafted on the board. Again, it went Hampton, Genty, Henderson, Ward, Judkins. So 4 running backs, 1 quarterback, and now a tight end before any wide receiver whatsoever at the 1-6. And so this team, they needed some tight end help, before the NFL draft. You got to remember, Warren was everyone's consensus tight end 1. And then even following the NFL draft, we all know now he's with the Colts. He was still drafted top 15 in the NFL draft. He went to the Colts, who doesn't have any tight ends of consequence. Yes, there's a lot of discomfort with knowing like who the quarterback is or isn't going to be for the Colts organization. But Tyler Warren is going to be a fantastic asset for any of these dynasty teams. And so I really like that he went with Warren. I didn't think that there was really any problem with it, especially pre-draft. And, especially if you need tight end help, like why not go for a guy that you're believing in? And the next pick is Tedero McMillan. I mean, I would much rather have had Warren over Tedero McMillan, and Tet was the first wide receiver that was drafted. The next wide receiver that was drafted on the clock, they took almost the entire clock. They needed to figure out, whether they wanted to listen to me on this channel or whether they wanted to listen to our co-host Colten. Ultimately, he went with Colten with his wide receiver 1, and that was Luther Burden. So at the 1-8, it was really funny how he said it. I ended up posting it at FF Healers during the draft. I thought it was just fantastic. I shared it with Colten, and I basically told him, and I was the next pick also, so I was more than happy that he ended up going with Colten's Luther Burden. I ended up getting my wide receiver 1 pre-draft process, and that was a Buka there, my one. It was a piece of cake, hammered. Yes, I did draft him over Hunter, and I think I still would. I still have a lot of speculations on Hunter. I know that BTJ is there. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 no matter what. And then they have Hunter, and they're both very young, and they're both going to be on this team for a long period of time. Hunter's going to be having less than 100% of snaps on offense. Meanwhile, Egbuka, yes, they have Evans. Yes, they have Godwin. Yes, they have McMillan, but I think Egbuka is going to still slot into the slot role. And I don't think that Godwin is 100% healthy, especially after having an injury just last year. Both Godwin, and Evans are on the older side. I think they're trying to build for the future. And I could see Egbuka overtaking this wide receiver 1 role for the Bucs, and it could be sooner than we expect. We've seen a number of very large wide receivers kind of break down very quickly, and I could certainly see that happening with Evans. Evans has had a fantastic career up until this point, 1,000 yards every single season. Completely amazing. I've loved Godwin for a number of years. I really hope that he gets back to form, but there's no guarantee after a catastrophic injury that they're going to get back to their full form. And so I think the Bucs did it right ended up drafting Egbuka. Again, this is pre-draft. I didn't know where Egbuka was going to go, but I did have faith. I did have conviction that Egbuka is an excellent wide receiver, and he's played with a number of other NFL caliber wide receivers in the league that it made for an easy choice here at the 109. At the 110, finally, we see Travis Hunter. This is going to end up being a value pick. There's a lot of fear going into it pre-draft. Where's Hunter going to be drafted? What team is he going to go with? If he ends up going on a team that's a little bit poorer on the top of the NFL draft, then, maybe he's not going to be utilized the way that you'd like him to on both defense and on offense. There was a lot of fear that Hunter was actually going to play a lot more defense than offense. And I still think that there's still a little bit of a gray zone, although the Jaguars were one of the better rosters that he could find himself on. And so here we go with Joe Murr going with Hunter at the 110 spot. Meanwhile, I've been seeing him go as early as the 102 in a number of post-NFL drafts. So well done, sir, and you got to take your shot. And, if you're looking for upside, you're getting close to the end of the first round. That's where you can start to, look at more upside versus some of the talent. I still like in the first round getting a little bit more of a definitive role of what the asset's going to be and not taking as much of a shot. But I think Hunter was a fantastic pick there. At the 111, the next running back went off the board in Caleb Johnson. And, we got to love those Hawkeyes. And T-Mick, Hawkeye fan, he definitely got his guy there at the 111 spot. So congratulations, man. He ends up getting drafted to the Steelers in the 3rd round, a little bit later than what you'd like, but he's certainly going to have a role this year. And, another running back for T-Mac. So T-Mac, he ended up going with Judkins there at the 5 spot, and then he also ended up getting him there at the 111 spot. And then finally, to end the first round, the 112 spot, there was a trade up. So the guy that was originally there at the 112, I'm at the 201 just kind of waiting to see what's going to drop to me. But the 112, he needed quarterback help. He decides to trade back because there's only one quarterback's been taken up into this point. So he trades back 2 spots, and the trade is the 202 and the 302 for the 112. and the 312. And so he trades back 2 spots. The guy that ended up trading up a couple spots, he ends up going with Colston Loveland. This guy, he's a huge Bears fan. He's going to find out later on at the NFL draft that his guy ends up getting drafted by his team. So double win for him. Loveland, the consensus tight end 2, not mine, but consensus is tight end 2 prior to the NFL draft. And he ends up being the first tight end that was drafted in the NFL draft. And again, picked right there with his Bears. So good for him for trading up. But here I am sitting at the 201, and I find myself, okay, I got a quarterback needy team. The guy that traded back 2 spots, he's now behind me. I've kind of got a pick here. Do I want? I'm on the clock, and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to go with the quarterback? Do I want to go with my next running back of choice? And I ended up going with Sanders instead of Dart, and I had Dart pre-draft as the next quarterback over Sanders. But my thought process is that if Sanders is drafted, even in like the second round of the NFL draft, that he has so much name cachet that he is going to help like stabilize and keep his trade value, or potentially trade back that 1 spot if the guy wants him. And then if that's the case, then I would just go with Dart or another player on the board. So I draft Sanders, and no sooner did I hit the draft button, the 202 guy, he ended up messaging me, and he's trying to send me initial offer of, okay, hey, I'll send you the 202 and the 302 for Sanders, which is the 201, my 307 and a 410. And I'm like, wait, I like to take a lot of my dart throws. Like, why am I feel like I was giving him more value than what I was getting in return. And so I quickly countered and I said, look, if you want to trade up 1 spot, I don't mind doing it, but I'm looking for a draft pick in addition to the 202. So I was looking at like the 202 and the 302 for Sanders. And, he kept going back and forth as his trade calculator. And he's like, Dart and the 302, equals the it would be worth the 201 plus another pick. And he was trying to get like another one of my thirds. And I'm like, no, you're assuming that I'm going with Dart, but you're actually trading me the 202, which is a completely, different assumption. Like, we can't assume here. You have to put Sanders in there for the 202 plus, whatever trade value that you have. And ultimately it didn't go through. He just kind of stayed pat. He ended up going with Dart in the next pick. Turns out we're both losers. Dart ends up getting traded back into for the Giants, but he's sitting behind 2 NFL caliber quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and in Jameis Winston with the Giants. And don't forget about Tommy DeVito being there too. But, Dart, I don't think has to worry about him too much. But Tommy did, start a few games over the last 2 years. Meanwhile, Sanders, he ends up falling all the way to the 5th round of the NFL draft because of all the drama that was surrounding him. Here we both are at the 201, 202 pre-draft process, and it's just a big pile of stink. But right now, like, you just got to hold and just hope that there's some camp buzz and see what you can do with these assets. Are they going to have an opportunity to start or not? I really don't know if Sanders is going to start, a game this year. And I don't know I certainly don't think that Dart's going to start. But I'm still seeing a post NFL draft in these rookie drafts. Both these guys are still going in this around the 2nd round. I've seen Dart go at like the 112. 113, 201, 202. So at least this guy, he ended up getting like the same value post-draft as he did here, the pre-draft. So he didn't really lose all that much value. Although Sanders now, he's kind of fallen more to the middle of the 2nd round. I've seen him, go even as late as the second part of the 2nd round. So I don't know. These quarterbacks, they tend to hold value a little bit longer. So I'm not as concerned here. Again, it's a 201 spot. You got to start taking your shots. And now we're onward to 203. And this is one of Colten's guys, Scadaboo. Scadaboo gets drafted here, 203. Great value. There was still a lot of hype with Scadaboo with the pre-draft process. He played fantastic with the Peach Bowl. He had a really pretty good combine, although he didn't run the 40. And then when he eventually ran his 40 at the pro day, it was a bit slower. It was that 4.7 mark, so a little bit slower. But ultimately, this is where Scadaboo's going post NFL draft anyway. So this team ended up, again, running back needy team. The guy that ended up drafting Henderson gets Scadaboo here and finds himself at a great value pick at the 203. At the 204 spot, we've got Matthew Golden going off the board. A pre-draft process, we were hearing that Golden is going to get drafted in the first round. I was hearing as early as, pick 15 overall. And he finds himself on the Packers, the guy who ends up picking him up, huge Packers fan, completely just massive Packers fan. So funny story with this guy. He ends up meeting one of my idols in Adrian Peterson, Vikings fan. And when he goes up and meets him in person, he's dressed from head to toe in Packers gear. And so AP, he couldn't help but say, hey, no, sorry, no cheeseheads. Brink, he basically was like, hey, it's not for me. It's for a friend of mine. So it was really, really neat to hear that story. And then now he finds himself with one of his guys in Golden. And so good for you, Brink, for drafting Golden with the Packers. And we'll see what kind of happens with this one. At the 205, Neal gets drafted. Again, pre-draft process. Neal had a lot of steam going in, but after the NFL Combine, he ran a little bit slower. His metrics were a little bit slower or a little bit lower than what we were expecting. And so Neal found himself that he could have been maybe in the first round, maybe on the turn, but now he finds himself kind of more in the middle of the second. And even after the NFL draft, he finds himself a decent landing spot. He's with the Saints now. Now he's kind of getting drafted either right in the middle of the second round or even towards the end of the second round. But I really don't see him too much getting drafted outside of the 210 spot. So pretty good value here. Again, T-Mick, he's going for running backs. He got Judkins, he got Johnson, and now Neal. At the 2-6 spot, there was a trade. Somebody, looks like Fuller, ended up trading back in here. He ended up trading his 212, 26 second, and the 411 in a rebuild team for the 206 and a 26 third. So he really wanted to get the guy on the board here. He smashes the button on Jalen Milroe. Milroe, even post NFL draft, he's going right around this part. Pretty good value overall. Has a lot of upside. And again, in the second round and beyond, you're really looking for our upside. When they get the start, are they going to make a dent in your roster? And are they going to be putting up points? And Milroe, we saw in college, he put up a ton of rushing upside. And so if Milroe, he can develop a little bit more at the quarterback position and can develop his arm, Milroe has every opportunity to be that guy and provide a lot of value for your team. And so Fuller, he's putting his hand on the table and he's like, hey, yes, I want to get this guy. Let me trade up. And he wasn't afraid to add in a second and even an extra pick just to move up from that 212 spot, just to move up 6 spots. So good for you. Good for him. At the 2-7, Colten ends up getting drafted here. Again, a guy I've liked pre-draft. And then he completely blew up at the combine, put up the same numbers as Achane, 20 pounds heavier. We can't say it enough. Goes to a team, again, a running back needy team. Same guy that went with Henderson, the same guy that went with Scadaboo just shortly ago, and now he gets Colten. Colten here at the 2-7. Fantastic. Again, the value is kind of around this point, even post-draft. So good for him to basically find that guy of value and continue to hit the button there at the running back position. The 2-8, we're finding somebody that, I'm at the 2-8. That was also another trade that involved the 208. Somebody ends up trading up. This ends up being our friend at Decode the Quarterback. He's like, you know what? There's a guy on the board I completely have to have. And if you follow him at Tier 1 Quarterback on Twitter X, you'll know that he is a huge Trey Harris fan. And he's not only drafted him here, I think he even drafted him in another one of my leagues. But he ends up trading the 26-second and a 27-second to get back into this draft to get the 208 and a 27-3. So that way he could get his guy in Trey Harris. And so, again, you're planting your flag. This is all pre-draft. You don't know where the landing spot is. He ends up finding himself in a fantastic landing spot with the Chargers. Trey Harris is going to become a value for his team, and he's, definitely one of the wide receivers now that are on his roster. So he ends up picking up this orphan this year, gets to have some fun, gets to trade back into this NFL rookie draft, and he finds himself with a guy that he believes in, and that's really what this pre-draft rookie draft is all about: planting your flags, getting the guys that you like. Next up here is the 2-9. I've said it many times, pre-draft here, I was between two guys, only two. And even at the 2-1, I was even considering both of these guys, to be honest. I was between Alec Ayomanor, my pre-draft wide receiver 3, or RJ Harvey, my running back 5. RJ Harvey being 24 years old, and Ayomanor, he's still around that 21, 22 range. It was a very hard choice. I remember taking up a bit of the clock here, probably maybe 30 minutes of the hour clock. And I kind of went back and forth. And, I think maybe Zach from Decode the Quarterback got in my head a little bit. And he's like, Ayomanor's still there. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, do I pick? Don't I pick? And then it ultimately what came down to, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go Ayomanor after all. Find out post NFL draft that probably wasn't the right decision. I think I made the wrong decision, and I think it came down to more age more than anything. I thought, well, I need to figure out, like, what am I standing for, and I wanted to go with like more of my pre-draft rankings. And I thought, you know what, wide receiver tends to stick around a little bit more in the fantasy football, more so than a running back, especially a running back that's of a little bit of an age. Go with Ayomanor. Find out later on he gets drafted in the 4th round of the Titans, but maybe he could be the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. So, I mean, it wasn't a complete bad pick overall, but the process probably was not the right process, and I should have gone Harvey. I did try to trade back in over the next couple picks, and it just didn't work out. We'll find out later on. Harvey actually gets drafted at the 3-1. I tried trading back in. I tried trading one of my 2/3 and a 4th, and just like, hey, I don't see anything more of value. I'm going to be hitting Harvey. And you know what? That team made the right decision, and I made the wrong one. So hopefully Ayomanor, he'll pan out, but I'm continuing to just kind of tilt on that one just a little bit. And I just wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to share that with you and the viewers. At the 210 spot, Harold Fannin Jr., again, a pre-draft darling that everybody was on. They absolutely love him. His metrics were fantastic coming out of college. He had over 1,000 yards of receiving. He is a bit of a tweener tight end. He's more of that move tight end, but he's got a lot of upside if he's going to play. I'm not really sure how I feel of Fannin, to be honest. And most of it is like, it's going to be kind of one of those boom bust tight ends, move tight ends. And I certainly didn't want to draft this tight end in the top 2 rounds of the rookie drafts in any of my leagues, pre-draft or post. But Fannin still has quite a following, and there's still plenty of people that, love the name cachet. But Fannin ends up finding himself in a poorer situation with the carnival circus that is the Browns. But not only that, he's behind a really good tight end in Njoku. And so it's going to take some time for Fannin, I think, to find the field. And I really don't think this is going to be a player that you're going to see a fast turnaround in order to get fantasy value as far as the points are concerned. But if you're patient, this pick could certainly, pay dividends. At the 211 spot, this is where Jalen Noel goes. Jalen Noel, Iowa State. It's interesting to see him get drafted before Higgins in this pre-draft NFL draft process. But Noel definitely was burning, especially after the combine. You know what? Both of them were. Both Iowa State guys were really burning up the news feed. A lot of interest, a lot of speed. And it was kind of like more of probably a choose your flavor for Fuller at this point. But he ends up going with Noel at the 211 and finds himself with some fantastic value. And then finally, to end the the second round. Jack Besh goes at the 212 spot. And you know what? You got to give credit here to Gold. He found himself many ways, trading in, trading back, and he was at the 2-6 spot, and he was able to trade back to the 212. He was able to get Jack Besh, and then if you recall, he actually got an additional pick later on at the 411 to kind of take another dart throw. So Gold, his team is more in the rebuilding stage. So he was looking to trade back, accumulate more picks, more value. And Jack Besh, he finds himself in a good situation there with the Raiders, where he could be wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 on a team that really wants to be successful. So good for you, Gold, with getting Jack Besh, a guy that, you know, competed with a lot of good players as a tight end when he was with LSU. And he was out targeting guys like BTJ and Malik Neighbors. So good value, good pick here. Entering the third round of this pre-draft rookie draft, RJ Harvey goes at the 3-1. I know. I let this happen. It was my own fault. It devastating. I couldn't trade back in. I was trying, but looking back, it looks like maybe I should have tried a little bit harder. I should have put in a little bit more value, and I just ultimately did not. And the same team that drafted Henderson, Scadaboo, Tootin gets another fantastic value here with RJ Harvey. And good job to you, Mr. Brett Favre. The 3-2, Dylan Sampson. 3-3, there's a little bit of a tight end run. This is where Arojo went. 3-4, Mason Taylor. And then finally, we've got an Isaiah Bond finding here. This is the first and only Bond that I actually seen drafted in any of my rookie drafts. Again, this is pre-draft. We later find out Bond doesn't even get drafted by the NFL draft. I couldn't even tell you exactly where Bond is at this day on a team or a roster. And this guy, he really didn't have that bad of a combine, but he was just kind of raising his mouth on how he was going to be the fastest wide receiver of all time for the 40. And, you know, he fell short to his teammate in Matthew Golden. Bond doesn't get drafted. Looks like this was a fairly poor pick when it was all said and done. But again, who knows how much this guy was looking into the pre-draft rankings, the pre-draft process, or did he just look at Fantasy Pros and say, who's some players that are potentially people are high on? And pre-draft people liked the name of Bond, but sorry, man. Should have went with the next guy instead, and that was Higgins. Higgins gets drafted here at the 3-6. Fantastic value. You'll never find Higgins this late. He's drafted at the early part of the second round. I've seen him even go as late as the late first round. And so Higgins here, fantastic value. This team's winning. He's winning fantasy. They're winning fantasy right here. Finally, it's my pick. I get to pick here at the 3-7. I've had this guy circled, and I have the 3-9 also. So I have the 3-7 and the 3-9. I got to kind of decide, what's this 3-8 going to do? And so it's always important when you're doing these rookie drafts, whether it's pre-draft or post-draft, to kind of take a peek and see what that team's roster looks like and kind of get an idea of maybe what the team needs are. Or if you happen to know, like, hey, this person they like this team or that team, or maybe they like a certain player that you've seen already before. And so you kind of know some of the trends. So yeah, this guy, he generally goes wide receiver. No, this guy usually goes running back, quarterback, or what have you. And so I decide I'm going to go with the running back that I like, and that's Giddens. And we heard just last week that Giddens finds himself in an awesome landing spot with the Colts, Jonathan Taylor. He's got an ankle problem. And Giddens here at the 3-7. This is about where he's getting drafted now, even post-draft. And I love Giddens. And so I think he's got some opportunity, and he's going to find himself in a great situation. And then at the 3-8 spot, they end up going with Royals, who I wasn't considering at the 3-9. So I was like, all right, I can get my guy at the 3-9. At the 3-9, we should all know that my tight end one is now Terrence Ferguson. I don't like paying up for tight end. So in the first round, I'm generally not going a tight end. Warren goes at 6. Loveland goes at the 112. We got Fannin going at the 210. We've got 2 other tight ends that go, Arroyo, then Mason Taylor, and then finally Terrence Ferguson. He's the tight end 6 that goes pre-draft, and I absolutely love it. After the NFL draft, I nearly get Terrence again, but our friend there at Decode the Quarterback, he ends up sniping me, as you'll find out in a later podcast, and as you found out in earlier podcasts. Kind of a funny thing that happened there. But Terrence Ferguson, I'm glad I could add him to my tight end needy team. I figured worst case scenario, I'll just have to pick another running back. And at that point, I probably would have went with ETN, but we'll find ETN ends up going here in 2 spots from now to our friend Decode the Quarterback. But at the 310 spot, Gordon goes, Ollie Gordon. Colten would have loved this pick. I wonder if Colten would have went with Ollie Gordon or if he would have went with Terrence Ferguson pre-draft at the 3-9 or 310 spot. That'll be a good question for him. We'll have to ask him in a later pod. At the 311, ETN goes. Decode the Quarterback, Zach. He ends up drafting him here. He knows I absolutely loved him. I have a couple picks here in the 4th round, and I'm like, maybe I'll get somebody. Who am I going to get? And ETN was not one of those guys. And, in the mock drafts pre-NFL draft, ETN was easily falling to the 4th round because he was all the way in like the 999 level of ADP. So he wasn't even on the board. You didn't even see him. But, good for Zach to kind of sneak ahead, find him here. And actually, when the NFL draft happens and post-NFL draft, ETN, he ends up probably being a little bit of a reach here at the 311. But at this point, you're just kind of reaching and you're trying to get your guys anyway. So ETN, I think he'll end up being a decent value when it's all said and done. And he finds himself in a situation with the Panthers where he's probably the running back 3, but they're not really sold on Dowdle, so maybe he'll be the RB2. This was the one that was really surprising to me that pre-draft there was a lot of praise on, and that's Damian Martinez at the 312. At the time, looked like a fantastic pick, like a fantastic value. But the NFL didn't seem to think that. He ended up falling way back in the NFL draft, like 6th or 7th round. And he found himself with the Seahawks as their running back 3. Now, he's not dead yet. But he finds himself in a very sticky situation where he's got 2 really good running backs ahead of him in Walker and then also in Charbonnet. But Martinez, now maybe the running back 3, depending on whether McIntosh is the 3 or 4. There still was some speculation at the time. We didn't know that the Raiders were going to be drafting Genty. There was thoughts of the Raiders actually trading for Charbonnet, which would have opened up the backfield and maybe would have things would have happened a little bit differently for Martinez. But we don't know. This is what makes it really fun with the pre-draft process. Again, you're putting your flag down and there's a lot of wish casting. And when you're drafting all these guys ahead of time, it makes the NFL draft from round 1 all the way to round 7 very interesting because you're rooting for your guys and you're hoping for them to land in a good situation on a good team, but also get the draft capital. To close this rookie draft out, we're now in the 4th round. At the 4-1 spot is Jordan James. There were a lot of people for some reason that really liked Jordan James. I thought he was more of kind of a jag myself, but the same guy that's drafted RJ Harvey and all these other running backs, again, he's just pounding these running back spots and a very good running back draft class. And so his next best guy up after all these running backs have gone was James. So he gets him here at the 4-1. Again, we're in the 4th round. You don't really care who you're picking, but you're trying to get guys that may have some upside, may have an opportunity that you can flip them for a higher pick, or maybe they can be a dart that actually becomes something for your team or for your roster. And again, this team really needed running back. And so this team did the right thing. They said, pounding the table. I'm getting every running back that I can get. And, I'm just going to get the next best running back and the next best running back and the next best running back. Our friend Decode, the quarterback, Zach, he goes with Gunnar Helm at the 4-2, which we'll later find out he ends up trading Gunnar for Kelsey and I think like a 4th-round pick. I'm not sure how that all worked out, but after the NFL draft, Gunnar Helm, he ends up getting a nice trade with this asset and getting a tight end. Although he's on his twilight of his career, is still a fairly valuable asset there with Travis Kelsey, and his team's a little bit more in a rebuild mode. Now he can decide: do I want to use Travis and maybe compete, or do I want to try and trade him at the 4-3? Now, again, we are completely just throwing darts. We're having a lot of hopium. We have no idea where any of these players have gone yet in the NFL draft. You're starting to pick your guys. And the next guy that ends up getting drafted here at the 4-3 is Will Howard. Will Howard, super flex, taking some shots. Who accumulates more value in super flex? Quarterback that potentially has a chance that could land on a good situation, that has a chance to, get the reins early on. Anything can happen. Will Howard, he gets drafted here, and he ends up falling, quite late in the NFL draft. But he currently finds himself in a situation where he's actually the quarterback 2 behind Mason Rudolph there with the Steelers. So stranger things have happened. Stranger things can happen. The 4-4 ends up kind of following suit with quarterback. Goes with Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers, again, he falls. He completely just falls in the NFL draft. He fell behind a lot of quarterbacks that a lot of people didn't even know who they were, which I think says a lot. Pre-draft, Quinn Ewers was speculated to be drafted in either the 2nd or the 3rd round in the NFL draft. He ends up finding himself barely drafted before the NFL draft ends in day 3. But the situation really couldn't be better, in my opinion, for Quinn Ewers. He is pretty much the next man up behind Tua Tagovailoa down there with the Dolphins, and a team that completely looks like it's imploding. So Quinn might find himself in a situation where he plays sooner than later. So again, stranger things. You've got 2 quarterbacks drafted here back-to-back, and both may find themselves in some opportunity regardless of where they were drafted in the NFL draft. So it'll be just something just to monitor here in the offseason and OTAs. And if there's any little bit of video footage and hype, you could easily turn that early 4th-round pick into maybe a 3rd or maybe a 2nd if they end up getting a shot to play a game or 2. So definitely could do worse. At the 4-5, this pick's going to end up being a player that actually may hit, and that's a tight end in Gadsden. Again, he had a weird running mechanics. I just can't get over that when I was at the NFL Combine. But Gadsden, I seen him being undrafted in a number of my rookie drafts. He gets drafted here about middle of the 4th round, pre-draft. Don't know where he ends up. He gets drafted by the Chargers. And the Chargers, they got Will Dissly right now. He played fine. They end up picking up Tyler Conklin, which I think right now, I think Conklin is the tight end to own, actually, for the Chargers. He's fantastic with blocking, which they're definitely going to need now with their 1-2 punch with the running backs. But Gadsden, he's another one of those move tight ends. And my concerns is maybe he isn't going to be as good of a blocker. And I think Harbaugh is really going to want more of that blocking, that really tough man type of tight end. And I don't know if Gadsden's that guy. But if he has any little bit of hype, has a decent catch, you could easily turn that middle of the 4th-round pick into maybe a 3rd. I think he's really going to have to show some production if you want to turn that into a 2nd-round type of player. You could easily, this person that has Gadsden, he likes to do bundles, and so he could add that player on top of maybe another player in order to kind of level up into another tier for another asset. So pretty cool there. At the 4-6 spot, you know what? This league has done really an amazing job. This is the 5th year now for this league, pre-draft, rookie drafts, and there isn't really a lot of terrible misses. It was really pretty straightforward kind of from start to finish. And, this guy is a player. Again, we're in the middle of the fourth round. He is undrafted by the NFL, but again, finds himself in an awesome situation where he gets to reconnect with his college quarterback, who happens to be drafted at the 101 spot with the Titans with Cam Ward. Xavier Restrepo gets drafted here in this rookie draft, and I really can't bash it. I mean, in years past, we probably would have seen Restrepo get drafted in maybe like the late second, maybe the early third. But this league has really gotten to be a very savvy league, a very active league. And so I really have to applaud how well that this league had performed as a whole with this rookie draft. The 4-7 Jaden Blue gets drafted here. Again, man, I can't believe it. This guy, he's just pounding the table at the running back position. He pounds another one. Blue, he could easily be the Dallas Cowboys running back of choice. I mean, all the Cowboys have right now is Javonte Williams, stinks. You've got Miles Sanders, who's getting completely just flushed down the drain. And then you got Blue, who really looks like a player that they had in years past in Tony Pollard. And what an excellent pick here. And really, when you're at the end of your draft, you should be just kind of hitting the button there at the running back position. You should be hitting the button on those quarterbacks and superflex. You should hit the button on, some of those tight ends that you're like, I like, but I'm not really sure on. Like, you're taking the shots. And well done, Brett Favre. The next pick, so I have 2 picks in a row coming up here at 4-9 and 4-10, and I'm thinking, my goodness, I'm going to get one of the quarterbacks that I've been really eyeballing here pre-NFL draft. But wouldn't you know it, I end up getting sniped here at the 4-8. The one pick that Zach, a different Zach from our league, he ended up drafting Dillon Gabriel. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Oh, man, I was one pick away. I thought I was going to get Dillon Gabriel. I thought, I don't think he's going to get drafted in the first round, but, maybe I think he could. I think he had the talent that he could get drafted in on day 2, second or third round, maybe sneak in there and find himself an opportunity. I was thinking maybe with the Seahawks, I thought it would have been a really funny kind of turnaround story. If we look back, Matt Flynn gets overpaid from the NFC North, goes over to the Seahawks. They end up drafting a later round quarterback who happens to be Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson beats out the multi-million-dollar quarterback that they paid in Matt Flynn, and the rest is history. Here we go again. History repeats itself. I was thinking that, Sam Darnold, he's getting paid over $100 million to be the quarterback for the Seahawks. I thought, what if an undersized quarterback again finds himself there with Dillon Gabriel in like the late second, early third round. And, Dillon Gabriel, he ends up getting drafted in the third round by the Browns. I was very excited for him. I thought, what an opportunity. Definitely had a shot, to start. And then they end up kind of muddying it up there with Sanders. And so, boy, would that have looked pretty bad for my team here with getting both Dillon Gabriel and then also Sanders at that 2-1 spot. So it actually, was a blessing in disguise that Gabriel didn't quite fall to me. But at the time, I was a little bit disappointed. I ended up going with the guy here at 4-9. Again, I'm kind of pounding the table here with the running back situation. We're in a really deep, really transitional running back class. And so I went with Hunter. And so I thought Hunter had some really good characteristics coming out. He ends up getting drafted by the Rams. Some people might not like that, but I really didn't see anything from Blake Corum to deter me from thinking that Hunter could be, could or couldn't be the running back 2 for this team. And so I found myself getting Hunter in a couple other leagues, and I'm more than happy with drafting him. And, I'd be drafting Hunter right now more at that mid to late third round. And especially probably just right after Giddens would probably be the area where I'd be targeting him. So anywhere around that 3-8 or later. So to get Hunter here at the for 4.9, I was more than happy. And then at the 4.10, I was in between a few different players, and some of those players being Tyler Show. I heard a lot of like pre-draft process of Show maybe being a team's quarterback one. I was thinking about LaQuint Allen, who I ended up going for, and it kind of ultimately came down to some of the notes that I had on the side about him being a sleeper running back. Some of the things about being one of the better running backs as far as like pass catching, blocking, that sort of stuff. And I thought, teams are going to value that. He could potentially get drafted a little bit earlier, and he ends up being with the Jaguars. Right now, he's fourth on the depth chart, but it wouldn't surprise me by the time the year starts that ETN's off the team, and so is Tank Bigsby, or Tank Bigsby's relegated to the third option, and Tootin and Allen end up being the RB1, RB2 for the team. So I think he definitely has some juice. He just needs to have the opportunity. One other running back that I had considered who I completely love, and that's Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt. But I was like, you know what? I'm just kind of thinking, I'm like, who am I more likely to get on the waivers following the NFL draft? And the waivers run like the day after the NFL draft for this league. So, just have to wait 8-9 days, and then I could, potentially draft Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. And so I ended up putting some waiver bids in, ended up getting him a little bit later on. Ended up doing the same thing for Show. Again, early on, I had some buzz, and I said, you know what? If he gets draft capital, I'll just put in a little bit more waiver money in for Show. And I found now that I've got Show in a couple leagues now with Superflex, and I'm more than happy to have him. Yes, he's older, but you know what? The Saints are just kind of at that kind of like, I don't care. He has the chance to start this year. He has the chance to start for the next 2 years. I really don't think that the Saints are wanting to draft a quarterback until Arch Manning comes back out. And so that means they want to maybe lean on a guy that, he's not going to completely toast this team, but he's going to, he showed at the combine that he has some running upside. So I think it's going to be kind of fun to see kind of what the Saints end up doing. But the Saints definitely have to just sell all these players as much as possible. And, we'll see what they show for it. And then finally, to close up the draft here, is Johnson. Remember the guy who ended up trading back from the 2-6 with his 4.11 spot that he had. He ended up going with Tez Johnson. And Tez Johnson, before the combine, before some of the measurables, there was a lot of hype on him. Oh, he's the next Tank Dell. And no, ultimately, I think Tank Dell, he was definitely an outlier to begin with. Tez Johnson's numbers really weren't that far off from him. Again, you're taking your shot. I don't think that I would have gone with Tez Johnson. Another guy who ends up getting drafted here at the 4.12 is actually going to be a much better option. And Kyle Williams gets drafted here at the 4.12 spot to close this draft. And so what an amazing draft this was. Again, I can't say it enough. Like, I really can't say a lot of negative comments about this rookie draft, pre-NFL draft process. People have really become a lot more savvy with the pre-draft process. There's a lot more news that's out there. There's a lot more ears to the ground when it comes to the Senior Bowl or the Combine. There's a lot of news when it comes to the pro days. And I felt like everyone did just really, really good. I ended up messaging our co-host, Colton Palmer, and I wanted to see like who he would have drafted here at the 3.9. Would he have gone with my guy, Terrence Ferguson, or his guy, Ollie Gordon? And he decided that pre-draft it would have been Gordon, but post-draft he'd go Terrence Ferguson. So there you have it, folks. That is the No Guts, No Glory pre-draft rookie draft. And you know what? This is one of 5 Dynasty Fantasy rookie drafts that I do. It's one of my most favorite because I love flag planting, and it makes every pick in your rookie draft a worthy pick, including your 4th rounders. And so if you have a league and you're looking to kind of shake things up, or better yet, if you have a new starting league or want to start a new league, please consider the option of drafting the rookies before the NFL draft. And you can thank me later. I'm your host, Dustin Brown with the Fantasy Football Healers. You can find me at FF Healers. You can find Colten at FFCaptain22 on Twitter X. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please like and subscribe. And don't hesitate to DM us and let us know who you want us to talk about in future episodes. Thank you and have a good day.
Cheerio, my good man.